Hello everyone. So today I wanted to make this video to discuss the important Saturn, Rahu, Ketu and Jupiter transits that's in 2023. Okay, so there are going to be some major changes happening in 2023 in the astronomical weather. So I hope to cover some of those transits and the content in this post. So before we begin, I want to make this disclaimer, and it's important we go through this, otherwise these kind of generic predictions will sort of stigmatize astrology, so we don't want to do that. So I will discuss why I'm writing this article or what's the point of this video, and after that we'll go into the details. So first things first is I want to clear some facts about how you can use this transit calendar that I will provide at the end of this video, and also the predictions for the Rashis and such. Okay, so it's going to be sort of like a tutorial more than a prediction, or how an astrologer would use the transits to make your predictions for your chart, etc., can be learned if you know how to use this technique that I will describe today. Okay. But as astrologers, one thing that they will not tell you in the videos when they're talking about such generic predictions using transits is that they are not aware of your placements in your birth chart. So that leaves almost 80% of the predictions in a zone that it's like a gray zone, whether it will manifest or not, we are not sure. So, what you must know as a client when you're approaching an astrologer, or as a student of astrology, or an astrologer when he's sharing this kind of information with you, he or she must also take these things into account. Okay, so all events in astrology happen according to the static promise in the birth chart. Okay, so that is the karma that sets the boundary conditions for a person's life. So, if you're not aware of how to do the static promise analysis of a birth chart, or if you do not know the rudiments of astrology, I think you must refrain from making any of these predictions using transits, because it will not make any sense if it does not manifest, or even if it manifests in ways that you did not anticipate, even then it will not make any sense. Okay. So instead of making such generic predictions, my recommendation is to book a consultation with an astrologer if you have to, and to receive accurate analysis of your birth chart, and use those transits, whatever that is happening, their techniques they can share with you accurately, instead of you listening to some videos and making erroneous predictions, right? Second point here is all events in Vedic astrology happen in accordance with the Dasha and Bhukti. Okay, so these are the specific time periods of a person's life that run in accordance with the placement of the moon's nakshatra at birth. So there are at least two important systems of dasha that we use in Vedic astrology. So one is the nakshatra dasha system of Maharshi Parashara, and the other is the Rashi dasha system of Maharshi Jaimini. So you must also understand your birth chart from the dasha point of view, because the dasha lord and the bhukti lord and the Rashi dasha lord or the Rashi bhukti lord, they will describe the nature of the events that is to manifest. Okay, so the transits are the dynamic events that happen around the static promise of the birth chart. Okay, if it is not promised in your birth chart, certain events are going to manifest, then no matter what transits hit those points, it's not going to happen. Okay. Then the third point here, if you're a student of Cards of Truth system, which I also teach and been using a lot in my predictions, and which I like the most in accurate predictions, you may also note that all events happen according to the static queen quadration spread, 7-year progressed card spread, and yearly quadration spread. Okay, so events will only manifest if they are seen in all of these three spreads. Okay, it must be confluence from all of these. In addition to that, it should have a confluence from the astrology. If you miss the astrology and you only look at the cards, you will only be seeing half of the answers that might manifest. Okay. Next, the above 3 points are important to be noted, and as I told, it's a disclaimer at the beginning before even attempting to address the transits of 2023 or any year for that matter. Okay. For example, if in a person's chart there is no scope to have sudden windfalls of money, then no matter how many lottery tickets they purchase, or even a great Dasha periods or cards or transits happen, it will only incur losses rather than jackpots. So I hope you get the idea. Alright. So same way, if you take a look at a person's life and you see it's a no marriage chart, and no matter how many people they may go and meet on dates, okay, even the best dashas are happening for marriage, the best cards are running, it will just be like passing ships. Okay, it won't lead to any some manifested or fruitful event to happen. Okay, it will not lead to a marriage because it's a no marriage chart to begin with. So those are the important things you must note because that will set the expectations right. Okay, that's what we call as the boundary conditions here. This is important because, as you may know from, either you have had a reading with me or if you've known me for quite some time in this community, you know that I completely refrain from generic predictions in astrology. This is one of the dumbest thing I feel as an astrologer I could do at any given time. But unfortunately, I have to make this video because I have to share some important things, and we are going to make the best use of even those generic predictions today. Okay, so that's why I wanted to make this more of a tutorial rather than making those predictions. So in this point, if you follow along the methodology that I teach, you can also learn to use the transits to analyze your chart and to make predictions and such. Okay, the reason is I do not want to stigmatize astrology, because if I tell you some things will manifest just looking at transits, and if it does not manifest, or if it goes beyond and it manifests twofold, then still people will not like astrology. So I do not want that situation to arise from this article or this video. Okay, next, you must also note one important point is the calculations matter. Okay, and you should also know that I use different calculations. I use the tropical zodiac with middle of Mula galactic center Ayanamsa and Dhruva equatorial positions for the nakshatras. So this will be totally different from other astrologers out there. They might be using the Lahiri Ayanamsa or some other different Ayanamsa that they feel is right for them. Okay, but I've tested this and I've done extensive research on this, and I'm sure that Ernst has been teaching for quite some time, so I'm going to use that. Okay, and the dates for the transits will also change because of this. Okay, so you have to note why these differences arise. But stick around, as some interesting things will come out of the Ayanamsha always when you learn how to make predictions using transits. Okay, because that's where you learn to refine what is the right from the wrong. Unless you do not make world predictions, or if you do not make predictions based on Rashis, you will never filter out what is the right kind of Ayanamsha. Okay, so let's see how we will fare with these kind of predictions coming up. So why this video? All right, so the summary of important transits of 2023, why it's an important year, what's happening. Okay, for a layman who does not have any idea of what has happened in astrology in the past few years, it's important that we also declare what transits are happening and summarize that in the beginning. Okay, so most important transits of any year are always going to be that of the slower end of the clock. We are talking about planets Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, Ketu in the same order, as these are the slowest of the moving grahas in the sky. Okay, and whenever the slow grahas move and they change Rashi's year, major events or major shakeups normally tend to happen. Okay, so as it happens, we have all three of these grahas changing Rashis this year. Okay, so needless to mention it, this is a significant transitory year for the decade to come. Okay, so important events will be set up this year, not necessarily manifested. So it is sort of that transit window that we can look forward to. Okay. So it is no surprise, right? That is the case with the world as it stands now. We are still caught in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic, and we are in the middle of the Ukraine-Russia war. Okay. And at the time of me recording this video, just 5 days back, there has been a huge earthquake in Turkey, Syria. Approximately 26,000 people and more have probably died in that earthquake. It's a tragedy already. To start with, 2023 is not looking so good. There is energy crisis in Europe. We have seen the FTX crypto stock exchange crash last year. It was a one big Ponzi scheme, right? Then we are at the brink of a recession, hyperinflation, and much more. This is the interesting part, okay? The recession and the hyperinflation. So that's the situation where we are looking ahead into 2023. There have been many more positive events as well. We can't always look at the negatives here, right? So we have seen in 2022 there was some cure for malaria and there was a vaccine. NASA nails an asteroid and sends it off its course. Technologically, it was a very important event. There was the launch of James Webb Telescope at the very start of 2022. There was a new breakthrough in nuclear fusion energy, and it was coinciding with a major Mars transit in Gemini for almost 8 months. Okay, so Mars is the Karaka for energy. All right, and Gemini is the experimental research centered sign. All right, particularly anything got to do with investigative and making any breakthroughs in scientific research, right? Laboratory research, we need a very strong Mercury and Gemini to be part of the equation. Okay. So Mars was transiting in Gemini for almost 8 months, and it's still there in Gemini. And we have this major breakthrough that happened in last year, right? That was very much related to energy here. Then we have a potential Lyme disease and HIV vaccine on the way, which is some very good news. All right. So it is indeed a very unique standing for 2023. Okay. So what are the transits that are coming up? So on March 7th, 2023, Saturn enters tropical sign of Pisces. Saturn will stay in Pisces for approximately another 2.5 years until 25th May 2025. On 25th May 2025, Saturn will enter Aries, where it's going to undergo debilitation. But Saturn will also move retrograde and enter Pisces again on 1st of September 2025 and stay another few months in Pisces. Until 14th of February 2026, this transit of retrogression will happen and he will move direct. So you can imagine this is a long few years, as always with Saturn transits, approximately 2.5 years in one Rashi. Okay. Then on July 18th, 2023, Rahu will ingress Aries and Ketu will ingress Libra. Okay, that's Rahu Ketu transits are changing signs here. So the Rahu Ketu axis was in Taurus and Scorpio. Now it's going to shift towards Aries and Libra axis. Okay, this will be until 12th of Jan 2025. So any eclipse dates starting from July 18th, 2023 to 12th of Jan 2025 are going to significantly impact people who have any grahas in the Rashis Aries and Libra. Okay. Also note that the eclipses not only are the day of the eclipse that is important, but the window of the eclipse, which is plus or minus 1 month of the eclipse, the world will be in the shadow of the eclipse that time, right? That's also a significant time. So events can always manifest plus or minus 1 month of the eclipse dates. Also note that in the transit calendar, you'll see periods when Rahu Ketu are shown as direct or retrograde. You may safely ignore this part and treat as the nodes Rahu Ketu are always retrograde. Okay, so this is about the transit calendar that I will share at the end of this video. So of course with Saturn, we will describe more in detail, but the major impact will be any grahas in the Rashi of Pisces will be impacted for all natives. Particularly Pisces natives will have a very strong impact. We will see that as we go on. Then on 20th December 2022, just recently, Jupiter enters Aries after retrograde phase in Pisces. Okay, so he was at the very cusp of changing signs. He was in Aries recently. He's still there. He's going to continue to be in Aries until 16th May 2023. Aries again, a Rashi of Mars. Okay, and we have seen that the earthquake was significantly important because the recent earthquake happened when there was Purnima, which is the full moon, and sun moon are very strong. When it is either the Amavasya or Purnima, the influence will be very strong. For earthquakes, we always need Saturn, Mars involved. Mars and Jupiter, Saturn, all these transits have led to the earthquake very recently. So that we have seen. Okay. And this is important because the gravitational pull of Jupiter is extremely strong, and he was in a mobile sign, particularly that of Mars, that we see recently for the earthquake to happen. So after 16th of May 2023, Jupiter moves into Taurus, and this will be on 16th of May 2023. Okay, Jupiter will stay in Taurus until 26th May 2024. So during this period of May 2023 to 2024, Jupiter will also retrograde in the sign of Taurus. Okay. However, he will not change signs. Unlike Saturn, he will not change signs, which is unlike what has happened when he was transiting in Aries or Pisces recently. Okay. So this is important as we are talking about the financial stability of the world, and both Jupiter and Taurus as a Rashi are extremely important for this. Okay. That is one of the main motivations for me to make this video. We will go into that. Okay. Next, 20th April 2023. That's a total solar eclipse that's coming up. 5th to 6th May 2023. That's a lunar eclipse. 14th October annular solar eclipse. 28 to 29 October partial lunar eclipse. Okay. So always eclipse dates of any year are extremely important for all natives, especially if you have grahas in the eclipse axis, right? Or if you have eclipse hitting any of your important grahas, those are always going to bring significant events. Okay. Main nature of eclipse is it brings life-changing events. Okay. Not every single eclipse will do that, especially if it is hitting the important grahas, as I told, to the degree important houses. It will definitely bring life-changing events. So the rule of thumb normally is some of the best events of a person's life and the worst events of a person's life tend to happen during eclipses, and that will impact the course of a person's life's journey in general. Okay. And it's also those events that will impact a person's consciousness or growth in a significant manner that tend to happen during eclipses. All right, this is extremely important, not only from the point of view of this lifetime, it's usually how the impact would last going into several lifetimes. That's why you'll see spiritual seekers and people who are on the path of spirituality in traditional households in major parts of the world, right? Asia, America, wherever, they tend to practice more of their spiritual karmas during eclipses. Okay, so it's always important to pay attention to these dates. Okay, next, some other notable mentions we have to take into account is it's a bit too late. Normally, I should have done this last year, then it would have been extremely important. Is Mars's transit in Gemini until 25th of March 2023, though. Okay, we are still at least 1 month into this transit in Gemini, and already some important events have happened. So we have seen how much of an importance that this was with Mars, with the war between Russia and Ukraine, and now the earthquake and so on, right? So Mars will turn direct in Gemini from 13th Jan 2023, all right? And he will zip through this period. Normally, that's the nature of Mars. It's not a very consistent transit in whichever Rashi he stays for 8 months. The transit can be very abrupt or unpredictable many times. Okay, so I hope the end of Mars transit in Gemini by 25th March 2023 concludes the war. That is my hope. Okay, but it's a hope. Or the prolongation of the beyond this period, some consequences will be dire for the world economy, which is, even astrology aside, it's very plain simple today. Mars will transit in Cancer from 25th March 2023 until 20th May 2023 this year. Okay, so extremely important window because Mars is naturally debilitated in the sign of Cancer. Okay, and I think some foreign influence will happen to the ongoing war and disturb the peace in the world. Okay, so I expect if the war prolongs beyond 25th March and before 20th May, right? Especially noting the 20th April solar eclipse, right? I think some important events are lined up here. Especially there will be some foreign influence because that's the nature of the sign of Cancer. Some water and oceans and those kind of things will be involved in this situation. Okay, so let's just hope it's going to end before that. Okay, then of course, then the faster moving planets, Mercury, Venus, are always going to be key trigger grahas for transits, particularly during the retrogression phase. So you must pay attention to that when you are looking at the transit calendar. Okay. Then, in the grand context of next few years, I also want to put the outer planets into this equation. Normally, we do not use that in Vedic astrology for predictions, but when you do the cards of truth system, so you will use that, and the outer planets have a significant say for a long period of time in transit, so we have to look into that as well. Okay. So this time it will have to be Pluto that we have to definitely pay attention to because he's going to change Rashis again from Capricorn to Aquarius on 23rd March 2023. So during this time, Pluto will retrograde and enter Capricorn again on 11th of June 2023. Interestingly, Pluto's degrees of transit and retrogression are extremely important this time. Okay, so pay attention to that. All right, and I write here that I have a nagging feeling about this. However, I will refrain from commenting anything about this in the post. Okay, interested people, you can do your own research. See when last time Pluto was in this kind of tight degrees in Capricorn. Okay, and you have to look into the last century or so, and you will find your answer. Okay, so I will leave some clues here. Think in terms of war, but not war of normal nature. Okay, it's usually unusual proportions that we are talking about here. Yes, you must learn to read between the lines when I make such statements. Okay. So I would also go ahead and give you some attention points, which is pay attention to Mars's transit in relation to Pluto throughout 2023 and 2024. Okay. Particularly when Mars conjuncts Pluto in the sky or when Mars is exactly opposite Pluto. Okay, which will happen when he is actually in the sign of Cancer, this window of time. Okay. And if it coincides with the eclipses, which unfortunately it does because we have major eclipses in that time, then it will be important. Okay. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, these transits of outer planets are lined up for next few years, and it's another important reason I feel that sooner the Ukraine-Russia war and tension between USA and China concludes, it is better for the world. Okay, that's just again a hope, but whether it will happen or not, that is left to the global consciousness. Okay, whatever it has to happen normally tends to happen in this kind of situations. All right. So next I want to just highlight about the transit calendar. That's one of the important things that you can use like a tracking event for yourself. Okay, so you can download that free transit calendar here. It's nothing significant. I'm not making any predictions here per se. But in this calendar, you will be able to see when the grahas are changing signs, especially the faster moving grahas like Mercury, Venus, Moon, and so on. Okay, it will not be useful when you do not understand astrology, but if you are using for making some notes, especially for learning astrology and seeing what happened this day, it's exactly like a calendar where you can make some notes for yourself. Okay, so I think having this is handy, especially if you're working on rectifying your birth chart and those kind of things. Making notes is always good for such purposes. All right, so as I mentioned, it's a generic calendar with trigger transits that give you events into account and without taking the planetary placements or anything, right? So it's not going to tell you what will happen in your life. It's just a transit calendar for the overall year. Okay. So now you have the transit calendar, you have the important dates of when these transits will happen, right? And then you also know how to analyze the birth chart, let's say, and also the Dasha and Bhukti. At least if you know how to analyze the birth chart, that's a good start. Okay, the Dasha and Bhukti is a little bit advanced, let's say, but if you know how to understand the birth chart, make concrete predictions at least, then we can go into looking at how to use the transit calendar, right? So first, again, please use this free chart calculator. You can calculate your birth chart for free. It's on Vault of the Events. Let me click and show you that. So this is the website. You can enter your details here and you click on whether North Indian or South Indian chart and click continue. You'll find your tropical Vedic astrology chart. Okay, so this is a site which Ernst and Srishti have created. We are using that in Kala software as well. Okay, so once you have this chart calculated, let me show you one example. Okay, so you'll find all the information here on this chart, right? You'll see what ascendant, what grahas are in what rashis. You'll see the Atmakaraka and the other karakas from the Jaimini Maharshi system. Okay, you'll see the dasha that you're running. All right, you'll see the antardashas as well. Then you can also see some other significant divisional charts in astrology for free. You don't need to pay anything for that. Okay, so these are the D2 to D60 divisional charts in Vedic astrology that we use. Okay, so in this example, all right, this is just on today's time and date for New York. All right, so we have a Libra ascendant. Ketu is in the sign of Scorpio. Sun, Mercury, Venus in Capricorn. Saturn is in Aquarius. Jupiter is in Aries. Moon, Rahu in Taurus. Right? Mars is in Gemini. And no planets from the signs Cancer to Libra. Okay. So this is how you note down the placements. And Venus is the Atmakaraka. The Atmakaraka is the Graha with the highest amount of degrees in the chart. Okay. So that's Venus, 27 degrees 38 minutes of arc in Capricorn. And the Dharakaraka is the degrees of the graha with the lowest amount, okay, which is Jupiter here. Then the rest are calculated in the same way, okay. So they are going to indicate the important personalities in the person's life along with the other natural karakas, okay. So if you know astrology, from now on you'll be able to make sense of the predictions and how to use them, okay. So going back to that article, so after you calculate your birth chart and note down the placements, as I just showed you for your own chart, okay, you must always make note of the lagna. In this case, it was Libra ascendant, right? Then note down the sun's Rashi, the moon's Rashi, and the Atmakaraka Graha and Rashi, okay? So sun was in Capricorn here, right? Moon was in Taurus. Atmakaraka is Venus, and he is in the sign of Capricorn, right? So that information you must always note down. So there are other significant karakas as well, as I mentioned, but for this article, just let's focus on the Atma Karaka. Okay, we are talking about predictions about you or yourself. So for that, Atma Karaka is a good start. Okay. But in case you do not have the charts of your parents, grandparents, sisters, siblings, etc., and you want to make predictions for them, you can also do that from your chart. And for that, you will have to note down the other karakas. Okay. Okay. Next, always all transits are important from the ascendant point of view. Okay. But when judging the impact of other grahas to the transiting grahas, the placement of the Sun, Moon, and Atmakaraka Rashis have a significant impact. Okay. Further, many classical textbooks suggest to focus on transits from the stronger of the Atmakaraka Sun or the Moon. So you can check these as well if you like. Okay. So what I mean here is that always you must take the transits from the point of view of the ascendant. Okay. The ascendant is the self, the body, and the personality, everything from this. But in some charts, and it is also prescribed by the rishis and the saints, is that the stronger of the sun, moon, and the Atmakaraka works. Okay, particularly Atmakaraka is always important from the Jaimini astrology system point of view. But for transits, we normally take into account the transits from the point of view of sun, moon as well. Okay, so note down these placements and count for that. Okay, for instance, Saturn will move from Aquarius to Pisces, right? So that will be for the Libra ascendant, a transit from the fifth house to the sixth house. That will have an impact. Okay. But if you take for the same person from the point of view of Capricorn, all right, where the sun is placed, it will be the transit from the second house to the third house for Saturn. All right. And if you take into account from the moon for the same person, right, it will be the transit from the 10th house to the 11th house for Saturn, right? So it can be such that in this person's chart, Venus is weak, Sun is strong, and Moon is the second strongest. Then the transits from Sun will normally work for them. Okay. There could also be a situation when Sun becomes the Atmakaraka as well. Then it becomes a double whammy for the Sun. Same for the Moon. Okay. Or even for this case, Venus is the Atmakaraka as well as the Lagna Lord. So transit from Venus or from the Lagna is extremely important. Okay, because it's a double whammy here. Okay, because Venus rules Libra, right? And Venus also rules the moon. So Venus will have a very strong impact on this chart. And the transits from Venus or the transits to Venus will have a strong impact. So that's how you would read it. All right. But always you must take the ascendant into account. Okay. Do not discount the ascendant at any cost because there is, two systems. Normally in the West, they like to look at it from the sun's point of view, and in Eastern philosophies and Eastern countries in India and China and other countries, normally they look at from the moon's point of view. It's not both. Normally, it's best to look at from the ascendant first and then shift your point of view towards the rest. Okay. Next, I write here an important statement. Okay. This is taking into account the three transits of Saturn, the nodes, and Jupiter. All right. So this time, the most impacted rashis will be the dual signs and movable signs. All right. In particular, you must note down if you have any grahas, planets in Pisces, Virgo, Aries, Libra, Taurus, and Scorpio. Okay. Secondarily, note down if you have any planets in dual signs, Gemini, Sagittarius, and fixed sign Capricorn. Okay. So these are the important rashis that will get impacted the most. Okay, because of this triple transit. Right. So any grahas that you have in this example, let's see. So we said Pisces, Virgo, Aries, Libra, Taurus, and Scorpio. Right. So they do not have any grahas in Pisces and Sagittarius, but they have a graha in Mars, in Gemini, right? So this Mars will get impacted very strongly for this native. Then I mentioned Capricorn, and here this person has three grahas in Capricorn. Okay, so it's going to be a very strong impact on these three grahas. Okay, this is not only from the point of view of one transit of Saturn, right? We're talking about the triple impact of Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu Ketu transits. Okay, that's why I listed out these important rashis here that will get impacted. Okay, so you might be a person who has a bunch of planets in Pisces, a bunch of planets in Aries, then it will also strongly impact you, and so on. Okay, next thing you want to do is note down the house cusps that fall in the rashis Pisces, Virgo, Aries, Libra, Taurus, and Scorpio. Okay, so the house cusps are these numbers that you see here, right? So here number 1 is the ascendant, the Lagna, 2 is the second house, 3 is the third house, and so on, right? So for Pisces, this person has the sixth house cusp here. It not necessarily will be the same. It will depend on the place of your birth. Sometimes you'll have a crowded house. Instance, you might have the fifth, sixth, fourth falling in the sign of Capricorn. Okay. Or you might have, if you're in the northern hemisphere, sometimes even 4 or 5 cusps falling in two rashis shared. So such things can happen. So you must note down particularly what house cusps are falling in these rashis, which is Pisces, Virgo, Aries, Libra, Taurus, and Scorpio. Okay. Secondarily, note down the house cusps that fall in dual signs Gemini, Sagittarius, and fixed sign Capricorn. Okay. So in this example, Gemini is holding the ninth cusp. Sagittarius is holding the third cusp. Capricorn is holding the fourth cusp. Okay. So those are the important cusps that will get impacted. In the predictions that I will write for the individual rashis or signs. Okay, that is the second article. That will be another video which we will look at in the next. So in those predictions, I will use the equal house cusp system. Equal house cusps are exactly like this. You will not have 2 or 3 cusps in one Rashi. It is equally divided. Okay, but it will not necessarily be like that for you. In this example, it looks like that. Okay, but note that you could have more than one house cusp in a Rashi, and predictions will dramatically change for you. Okay, so that's why astrology becomes more and more tricky, and our life becomes a hell as an astrologer when such house cusps are lined up. Okay, if you do not understand the meaning of the previous sentence, which is this, okay, then please refrain from concluding or assuming any predictions I make will apply to you. Particularly the second article that I will describe. If you do not understand about house cusps or rashis, etc., then do not conclude anything from that article. You might read it for your understanding purposes, like a tutorial or a fun article for you, but do not get influenced by it, let's say, both positive or negative. Okay, because the chances are it will not. All right, like I said, it will not mostly impact if you do not understand any of these things. Okay, yes, this applies to both positive and negative predictions. Okay, all right, so the reason I'm being very slow and also extremely careful when I'm talking about that is this disclaimer part is extremely important, because the next predictions that we will make for the rashis from Aries to Pisces, the 12 rashis, I'm not going to go and sugarcoat my words. All right, so I'm going to be a bit direct and open about some tough predictions as well this time. So that's why I want you to really register these things. Okay, let's see. So now we'll start with the predictions for Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu. Okay, so we'll look at in detail what these transits mean and how it will impact each and every Rashi to go in the next video. Okay.